Hello, my name is Bill Borquist. I'm one of the founders of the Library of Professional Coaching. We have begun a series of videocasts which are bringing interesting, informative, and hopefully useful information to you in your own work as a coach or as a consultant or as a therapist. We hope we find these of use and something applicable right away. So this videocast is the second in a series on stress. And what I want to do in this videocast is focus on the stress in the workplace, and more specifically, look at the job, the structure of the job that you occupy in an organization, and the structure and dynamics of the environment in which your job is operating. Now, in doing this, I'm building on the work of a series of essays and things that came out actually in the Harvard Business Review a number of years ago that I think are still quite valuable and relevant. And they have to do with the span of authority, responsibility, support, and influence that you have in your job in the organization. Now, the work was originally done around teams, and in a later videocast, I'll focus on teams, but I've taken this work and began to look at it in terms of individual jobs. So I'm looking at the issue of authority and responsibility as something that's really internal to your own job. And then I want to look at support and influence as dynamics that are in the environment in which you're operating. And then each of those I'm going to break into two subparts. Now, what's I think of value here are not only the ideas that I'm going to be presenting and how they tend to create stress, particularly when you look at the alignment between these four different factors, but also I'm going to be, along with this videocast, we're going to present an inventory called RISE, which is assessing the dynamics of your job. And you're going to be able to fill out that inventory, and you're going to be able to look at your own job structure and dynamics. And are there reasons to consider this a stressful structure and dynamic, and ways in which you might want to modify the job or request modifications? So let me talk about each of these. First, let me talk about authority. Or as I'm thinking about it in terms of the individual job, I'm using the term intentionality. How much authority do we have in our job? Now, there's two ways to think of that authority, that intentionality. One is, how much real control do we have? This essentially is formal authority that's been vested in us or that we've assumed in some way. So there's control. But there's another kind of authority we have, and that's what I'm calling patronage. And that's more informal. That's where essentially people in the organization or outside the organization have essentially granted us some informal authority. And so we have both kinds of authority operating in our job. So as you assess your own level of authority or intentionality, how much formal control do you have? How much informal patronage is found with your job? So the second factor is responsibility. How much responsibility do you have? Have you taken on yourself, or have other people assigned you? Now, once again, there are two kinds of responsibility. There's the formal, which is accountability. That is, you're formally accountable for certain performance, certain outcomes, and you're being evaluated on the basis of that. The other is something informal, which is hope. That is, to what extent are people hopeful that you will achieve certain outcomes? So these are an important set of dynamics right there. What is it that you're formally accountable to? And what do people hope you will achieve? Those are both very, very important, and they both have major impacts on our own level of stress. So those are the two internal things: authority, responsibility, or authority or intentionality, as I'm calling it, and responsibility. So what about the environmental factors? One is support. How much support are we getting from other people in the organization for our work, for the job that we're doing? Once again, there's two different kinds of support. There's one that I'm calling investment, and that is essentially tangible support. People are investing time, money, formal kind of assistance to help you and support your work. There's also the less tangible encouragement that people are offering. It's really, I think, an important difference is support can be real, essentially, investment, real resources being allocated for you in support of your work, or it can be just encouragement, which is also very helpful. The tension between the tangible support and intangible, I think, is very important. So the fourth factor is influence. Influence has to do with how much, and I call it enabling, how much enablement do you have out in your environment? So support means what comes into you, enablement and influence what goes out from you. So once again, there is tangible influence enablement on your part where you truly assist other people in the work. You lend a hand, you go over and help them out, or you provide revenues. So much like we have investment coming in, we have assistance going out. How do they balance? How much are you getting and how much are you giving? And is there a difference between the two? And then there's the intangible enabling we're doing. And once again, that's encouragement. So that's encouraging other people in the work, supporting them, motivating them. So once again, to what extent are we actually assisting other people? And to what extent are we encouraging them? So we have these dynamics going on. So this is essentially when I look at responsibility, I look at intentionality, I look at support, and I look at enablement, that's RISE, and that's where I call it RISE. And so that's this inventory you're going to get called RISE, which has to do with those four factors. Now, the key thing about stress is not only the tension between formal and informal and tangible and intangible I've talked about, but also the relationship among and between these four factors. For instance, the obvious one is authority and responsibility. Do we have sufficient authority to match the responsibility? A huge source of stress for many of us in our jobs is that we're giving a lot of responsibility, but we don't have much authority, either in terms of formal control over resources or time, or even the notion of patronage, informal kind of authority. So we need to look at the balance between authority and responsibility. Second one is the one I just mentioned before, between influence and support, between what was being given to us, offered to us, and what we're giving out. And sadly, for many of us, we end up giving out more than we have coming in. But there's other combinations here that are also very interesting. What about the relationship between authority and support? If we don't have a lot of authority, can we at least get support from other people? Can we get tangible investment of other people? We may not have the resources ourselves, but can other people provide some of these resources? Often what occurs is we end up not having much authority, and all we get from others is encouragement. If we don't have a lot of authority, and if all we're getting back is encouragement, that often actually increases the stress, not decreases it. Another key one is the relationship between responsibility and influence. That is, what are we formally responsible for? And to what extent are we influencing out there in areas that are not specific to our domain of responsibility, but we're making a difference in our organization. And the tension may be there that essentially we end up having a lot of influence out there. And that may drive our responsibility. And that all, particularly around the domain of hope, that often what's pushing us late at night and staying awake at night and all is other people hope for us doing good work. They want us to be successful because our work influences their own work and their own success. So these are some of the various tensions that exist in jobs as they're structured in the 21st century. Stress comes when in fact there are bad matches, bad alignment among these different factors. So what I'm suggesting you do is look at what I've just presented, look at the RISE inventory that'll be attached to this or accompanying this video cast, and begin to think through your own job. And there's a particular graphic that it's on the RISE thing that looks at whether these various things cross or whether they're misaligned. So you're going to see some graphics here that help you look at stress in your own job. And what it means is there's sufficient research experience to suggest if the alignment isn't good for you, you have every reason to be worried, fearful, feeling the stress. And you have every reason to seek to redesign your work, align the expectations, the hopes with with reality. These are all things that you can do. So in the midst of the challenges that occur with stress in the workplace and your job, there's also a possibility of doing something about it. So as I say, there's a pony in there somewhere. Thank you very much.